How's everybody doing? Welcome back to New York 1-to-1. I'm I Think You Know, and in today's episode, we'll be clearing up the mess of traffic downtown by building our first subway lines, and doing a little work on the bus network as well. And later, in the live play, we'll look at the first finished neighborhood in the build, an extra bus route not shown in the thumbnail, and more in the quickly growing city. But what we have to, of course, first talk about is the subways. They're finally here. I'll be honest with you, I don't really think that I would have gotten to them so quickly, but the population was growing fast enough and the streets were busy enough to really call for it. So what I've gone ahead and done, as you can see me bouncing around the screen here, is I've essentially built out just the skeleton of the grid above House and Street, which is where we've essentially built fully up to already. And I've just built enough roads so that traffic can flow and that, garbage trucks and other services can get to the subway stations. And then I've gone ahead and built most of Manhattan's IRT. So for those of you that don't know, New York has two divisions, they're called, of subways, and you'll know them as the lettered lines and the numbered lines. The numbered lines, the A division, are the subways which were originally part of the first ever private subway company in New York, the IRT, Interborough Rapid Transit. And they built their tunnels a little bit differently, so they continue to remain a separate part of the system, since they're a bit narrower. If you've ever been on a numbered train, you'll notice they're a bit cozier than the lettered trains are. But some of the first trains in the city that were opened up in 1904 were these lines that go from Lower Manhattan today up to Grand Central, over towards Times Square, and then eventually up into Northwest Manhattan as well. But what we've essentially been building here is what will become the 4, 5, and 6 on the Lexington Avenue line on the east side of Manhattan, and the 1, 2, and 3 on the 7th Avenue line on the west side of Manhattan. And these two lines kind of arch down the city and converge in Lower Manhattan and provide a really great number of stations. And we'll take a look at it in the live play, but there is a ton of people already using it, even though the population of the city is still under 20,000, but we get pretty close to that, you'll see. So what's being built here is using all of the Metro Overhaul mod. This is a mod that I've used for a very long time. It's a fantastic mod, and the updates that were done to it, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago now, particularly do something special, which is allow me to build stations that have express and local. So 4 tracks running through instead of just 2. And that's critical when building a New York series, because New York is famous for its lines having both local and express services. And what I'm also using is a lot of different subway assets here that you might not be familiar with. Some of these assets for the actual stations are years old. I mean, they're from 2017, 2018, something like that. But they're stations that some creator built that have, 2 trains at one level and 2 tracks at another, and 3 in one direction and 1 in another. And they're kind of all over the place. But it allows me to bring that depth to the stations in the city, because so many of the stations in New York overlap over each other. And even though right now we're only building out some numbered lines, we still have to take into account that the lettered lines are going to come later. And just to be clear, we're not going to build the lettered lines for a long time. Not until we get to Brooklyn, because I'm going to have to feed the trains from Brooklyn through there. Because to me, one of the semi-downsides of the Metro Overhaul mod is that you do need to have that depot that dispatches the trains. And if you saw at the very beginning of the footage, we actually put that at the very top. There, you can see it again here, in Northeast Manhattan, farther north than we'll actually ever build. And that will feed all the numbered trains, or at least these numbered trains, the 7, which we'll build in Queens eventually, will probably get fed somehow else. But to feed all the lettered trains, the way I've done it in the past was actually to do that in Brooklyn someplace at the bottom, kind of like below J Street, below Barclays Center, below where all of those trains are. And another really fun thing that the Metro Overhaul mod lets us do is build this lovely little loop. And I know that looks really tight, but it actually works, and we'll see it later. But The way that the local and express trains for the 456 interact in Lower Manhattan is that the 6 train enters that loop and comes back north in that direction. The 6 train is the local, which goes stop by stop throughout Manhattan, and then eventually goes both local and express depending on what train you're taking and what time of the day it is in the Bronx, which unfortunately we won't get to build. But the 4 and 5 train, which will combine into one here since we're never going to get far enough out into Brooklyn to separate them and make them unique, that will get built all the way into Lower Manhattan. So it might be one of these weird situations where the express train might be handling a lot more passengers than the local train is, but you can see there the asset for the train itself. Those assets are absolutely phenomenal, and I just love using them. They are real New York City assets, and they work and look just perfect. The tricky part is with the Metro Overhaul mod and getting it to work the way you want it to, is I need to use Traffic Manager President's Edition to make sure that the local trains stay on the local tracks and the express trains stay on the express tracks. And when I actually first shot the footage, I couldn't figure out how to do it. And thankfully, one of the mods in that mod page was able to just like tell me, yeah, it's page up and page down, the switch between an above ground and a below ground view when you're in Traffic Manager. So if you ever needed to know how to do that, that's how. So what I've gone and done here though is I started building the 5 train out, and then I'm like, wait a minute, something's missing. And that's a tough part when you're doing a build like this. It's you're looking at it from above, you're looking at it from a distance. None of the streets have names, none of the streets have landmark buildings yet, and I totally forgot to put in Spring Street. So if you're watching me build it earlier and you're screaming at your monitor, you forgot Spring Street, you idiot. Well, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I figured it out eventually. But this is just the end of the connection of the 4 and 5 train. Again, kind of looping those together, and you will see me also change the colors of these routes to match the exact hex codes that the MTA dictates. The MTA actually has a really cool page where it shows what hex codes are for each of their bullets. Those are the logos with the number and letter symbols inside of them. And naming them properly, and it just works. It's one of the most exciting things that I get to do in the game, and once you eventually do build them all out, it looks so cool. But particularly in that map view mod, I always like seeing it in that. Certainly a few of my Reddit posts in the past have shown that. And then while I'm doing the subway build, I decide I don't want to be in that subway view the whole time. It's not really the most exciting thing for you to all see, and I decided that that's going to handle north and south traffic really well, but there needs to be some east and west already. So I took a look at the New York MTA's bus route map, and I'm not that familiar with the buses downtown because I don't, take a bus downtown. If I go downtown, I take the 4-5 usually, or I don't know, whatever other train I feel like. But we did need to build some east-west traffic, and this is actually the M22 Bus. And one of the things I was most excited when building this is to see the bus assets themselves, which if you follow me on Twitter, which if you don't, you should, it's at I think you know. I posted a pic the other day of a nice, fully filled in shot with one of those new buses, and it's actually the new Flyer buses that they're called New Flyer, and it's in that new like dark blue livery, which I do kind of miss seeing the white buses in New York. You see them so infrequently now. I feel like maybe all of the buses have had that new livery applied, or I know the city's been taking deliveries of entirely new buses as well. But this is a nice little bus that takes us from the northern part of Battery Park City, which we'll take a look at more in the live play. That I finished off camera. Really happy with how it looks. Gently detailed, but the building placement looks really cool. And then it brings you all the way across the island east, and look at that bus. Beautiful. Exactly what you want to be seeing. And we'll take a look as it rides down West Street here, the West Side Highway. And that's what I want out of the city. I want, it's really starting to come together. And when we do look at that fully completed neighborhood in the live play, I think you'll really see that as well. And I hope you're as excited for it as I am. After building the bus route, though, it was time to go and put in the other numbered trains today, which is the 1, 2, and 3, the 7th Avenue line on the west side of the city. And kind of a misnomer in some ways. It's called the 7th Avenue line because the trunk of it, the main section, runs down 7th Ave, which is that downtown one-way street you're seeing in the middle of the screen here. But the tricky part there is right there. That is essentially the Times Square station. Not essentially, it is the Times Square station. And you'll notice there's an extra line going through Grand Central as well. And when I've always built this in the past, I've always built the 7 train, but never done the shuttle. And this is the first time that I'm going to be building the shuttle. So we're not building it here. It'll get built in the future. I got to figure out a way to get it fed properly. Might be a little bit awkward. But I figured if I'm going to be doing this New York build as properly and as good as I can, I wanted that in there. So I was happy I was able to figure that out. I had to download a new asset for it. I've been downloading a few new assets, just seeing how far I can stretch before my memory absolutely creaks. And then just really shoving this 7 train, oof, the 7th Avenue line, the 1, 2, 3 trains all the way downtown. And much like the 6 train has that little loop with the 4, 5, the 1, 2, 3 trains have that as well, where the 1 train splits off right before the World Trade Center and runs downtown by itself. The 1 train goes all the way to the very bottom of Manhattan and stops. And the 2 and 3 trains, which curve east and then south into lower Manhattan, and then eventually continues on into Brooklyn. Now, the 4-5 train goes into Brooklyn as well. We're not going to be building either of those connections today. I would need the exit points in downtown Brooklyn in the future, so certainly once we get to Brooklyn, I'll be building those, and we'll get to see these extended. But using the Metro Overhaul mod, it's actually pretty easy to kind of rearrange stations and rebuild lines very quickly, especially when you have that little tool where you have like the stop selector, and you hold down Shift, and it lets you select which track you want within what can be, 2, 4, 8 possible tracks in some of these really big stack stations. But, what we're building now is really laying the groundwork for the future and allowing us to have this subway just handle so many people. I mean, when I had it in my last full build of this, I think it was handling thousands and thousands of people, and that's what keeps the traffic reasonable. If you don't do that, the traffic will just be 50-60% gridlock or worse, and it just really doesn't work right, and it becomes a really big problem. Just kind of running around the map here, continuing to check things out. This is one of the so using Traffic Manager like this is also very tricky. You have to make sure that, especially where the lines end, that there's room for the trains to cross over and complete their tracks, because wherever you end the line, that dot has to meet up with itself. But just really here, this view I was able to get for some reason when I went back and did this round of recording, but it looks a lot better, a lot easier for you to see what's going on. I'll try to make sure I use that in the future when I'm building more mass transit. I just didn't have the right mod before, and I have the right mods in now. I had to tweak some things around, but just quickly building that 1 train, and then you'll see us quickly build the 2 and 3 as well. But I don't know, to me, New York as it exists in real life is not New York without the subway. I think the subway is so underappreciated, despite it being an everyday part of everyone's lives in New York, and I love it. I'm the biggest subway nerd. Well, not the biggest, I mean, it's hard to say in New York. There's so many people that love the subway and are really cool about it, but I've loved building it here, and we'll certainly see an episode in the far future where we continue to build it out more. But I really do appreciate all of you sticking around. We're going to get to the live play really soon. Before I do that, I just wanted to thank you again for sticking around, and if you haven't already, hit like, hit subscribe, come see some more videos, tell a friend. We're growing the channel. We're going to keep doing this. We're going to speed up as much as we can. We're going to do more live streams in the future. I got big plans. I continue to see really good feedback on all the videos, and I couldn't be doing that without all of you. So once again, thank you for sticking around, and let's get into that live play. And we're back here in the live play, and what we were talking about before, it's finally here. This is the first completed neighborhood in the city, and we had built some of this on camera in previous episodes or on the live stream, but I went ahead off camera and filled in the rest of this section up here. Really looking at Google Maps and trying to build out areas that look as accurate as possible while using the assets that I have. And I'm really happy with how this has come out. And those, again, for you who follow me on Twitter, you've seen this kind of view. And getting a view like this where it's really concentrated and you don't really see too many green areas or unbuilt spaces is what I'm really looking forward to as the city continues to build and continues to expand. I went over to the east side of the bridge a little bit here as well, and almost linked in together with what we had built on the first live stream, which I will be planning to do another live stream soon, maybe as early as this coming weekend. I'm not really sure. I, of course, will announce that both on the YouTube channel and on my Twitter, so you can come and watch and join in. Because I think what I really want to be doing next in those streams is kind of continuing to build out the residential assets over here. So we did talk about during the video as well, all the transit we built. This bus route starts all the way down here. Here's one of those bendy buses coming in now, and then sneaks up Water Street, and then all the way, into this finished neighborhood, and eventually up into this. This bus runs up First Ave, down Second Ave, and just another way for our citizens to get around, because I want to keep that mass transit looking forward as much as possible. But another area that I did want to show everybody, I kind of mentioned that we had one complete neighborhood over here, but in reality we have two, because in the last episode we built the World Trade Center and the lower part of Battery Park City, but I didn't quite finish the top part, and I did finish that off camera. So you can see here, I got some lightly detailed baseball fields in, but just a lot of different buildings all layered in amongst each other, and it gives us a lot of people. If you saw before when we were backed out, we're now at nearly 22,000 citizens. Battery Park City alone has 6,000, and the Two Bridges neighborhood here has over 6,000 as well. So from a city that I think during the last episode was at 10, we're very quickly up to 22. I think we'll really quickly push it to 30 and 40 and 50, especially once we continue to build out this part of the Lower East Side, since if you look at this on the map, there is a ton of apartment buildings, housing projects that kind of line this entire neighborhood and will allow us to really build very, very quickly. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about, since you're probably noticing a bit of a color change here, this is using a different LUT settings, just different overall settings. And I'd really like for you to tell me, this is the kind of the question of the day down below in the comments, is do you like this more dull grayish look that I think is maybe a little bit more realistic, or do you prefer the bright, more green and yellow look that you've seen in the time lapse and you've been seeing in all the videos for this series so far? So yeah, let me know down below. We're really curious to get your thoughts on that. This is something that I meant to do on the first live stream and never quite got around to it, but I often build when I'm off camera. I build in this color scheme. It's a little bit easier on my eyes and helps me to get through things a little bit more quickly. But the last thing I want to show today is what the benefit of all this work this episode has been, which is, as you can see, we already have hundreds of people using the buses and using the metros, using the subway. So it's really been positive so far. I'm really happy with how this has all turned out. And this is going to provide the backbone for us to continue to grow the city without completely getting gridlocked in traffic. And that's just exciting. We're going to keep building. We're going to keep going. Thank you all for hanging around. And I will be announcing a new live stream soon. And we'll talk as well as to where we want to go next and what parts of the city want to be built next. So thanks again. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Comment down below, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.